Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kilowatt. My name is Bodie, and I am your host, and it is actually decent weather here in Arizona. I got the window open. It's nice and cool in the house. I think it's like 67 degrees outside. Let's take a peek. I don't know why you'd want to know. Yeah, it's 67 degrees outside in Arizona, and it is nice. It was nice and chilly this morning. Whew, it was a good day. You know what else made this day great is I got to sit down with Allison Sheridon, and we talked about the Audi etron Sportsback, the 2022 version of this car. She was visiting a friend in Texas. I'll let her tell you the story, really, but they got to drive it. Steve and Allison got to drive it, and Allison is going to give us her impression of the Audi etron Sportsback. Just a quick note before we get into the interview. I was going to talk about the GMC EV that was just announced last Thursday on the 20th. I'm going to push that to Friday because I'm looking into some more things. I didn't want to just give you specs. I wanted to try to give you some insight, and that's taken a little bit longer than I thought. So we'll talk about that on Friday. Now, without further ado, let's jump into our interview with Allison Sheridon. Allison Sheridon, welcome to the show yet again. You're like my most oftenest guest. You're the person that comes on the most.
Like a bad penny, I just keep returning. You can't get rid of me.
Like a lucky penny.
Depends on your perspective.
Well, you know what's lucky today is you drove an Audi etron Sportback, and I want to hear all about it. So let's start off, just kind of give me some details on the car. What year was it? What color was it? And whose was it?
So this was a 2022 Audi etron Sportback. It was white, and it was our friend David Roth. We went out to visit him in Houston when we went to see our son, and we got to his house, and we knew he had this car, and we went to go out to lunch, I think it was, and he goes, "Want to drive?" Yes. So Steve and I both got to drive it, and it was really cool. It was really slick. We had a really good time driving it, and I was very impressed with the car.
Yeah, Kyle. Oh, I'm going to forget Kyle's name, but he does the Out of Spec Studio in our YouTube channel, and he and his wife love the e-tron, and they have a ton of electric vehicles that they own. Like they have a warehouse. They have so many electric vehicles. Wow. Yeah, it's pretty successful, but they're a big fan of the e-tron. So you're in good company for liking this car. How much does it cost?
So he said it was around $80K, and that I didn't go through and spec it out. He got the Sportback, and he went for top of the line stuff within that category. And I think they say they start at 50 or something like that. So that sounds about right? The sticker price is 50, but it really costs you 80 by the time you walk out. I did not double check his numbers on that, but about 80K. So my frame of reference is going to be from driving a Model 3 most of the time and Model Y on occasion with Steve's car. And those cars were around 70, 75K with all the fixings. So on the order of the same price car, but a very, very different car.
Yeah. It's a... With Audi, you get the belt. You feel like royalty in an Audi. Like Tesla, very minimalist. It has its place, and it still is very nice. But with Audi, you have like just this plushness. Like my captain, his mom called him up on the first day of one of our shifts, and she's like, "Hey, I just bought an Audi e-tron." The next day, she brought it by. We had a call, so I didn't get to ride in it. But she let us crawl. She let dirty firefighters crawl all over this car and play with the buttons and touch the screen and stuff. And the first time I saw an e-tron, I was like, "This is nice, but it's not super fancy. It was about 50,000 new back then. It was 2019 or so. But her car has been updated quite a bit, and it does feel very luxurious. It feels like an Audi, whereas before it felt like a Volkswagen that was badged as an Audi, which nothing against Volkswagen because I love VW too. What was your
it's interesting that you bring it up as a luxury line. Steve and I drove Honda Motor Company cars our entire lives up until we got our Teslas. So the last car Steve had was an RDX, and he had already had an RDX, and he considered not getting a second RDX. And he thought, well, you know what? I'm just going to expand my horizons and try some other cars. And we tried an Audi Q something, I don't know, whatever the like medium size crossover sort of SUV was. And he really wanted to like it, but we really didn't. It just didn't blow our dress up, and he went back to the familiar, and he kind of wanted to get away from the familiar. You know, he wanted to try something different, a new kind of car, because we could get in any car made by Honda Motor Company. We know where every button is, and you know that takes some of the fun out of it, of discovery. But when I got into the Audi e-tron, I felt luxury. And this sounds funny, but one of the things that struck me immediately was it was a white car with a black interior, but brown leather seats. And the part where your butt goes is real leather, and I think everything else is, they call it vegan leather. Mm-hmm. But there's something about that look that says luxury to me when it's brown leather in a white car. I don't know, that was kind of my impression. But the seats were comfortable. The car, I want to put this out there right at the very beginning. The car is extremely heavy, so it moves with grace. You know, it is not a sports car. It is even though it's called a Sportback, it is a luxurious, weighty kind of car. It's not boaty like a lot of big cars, but it's boaty, not B-O-D-I-E, but boaty. The curb weight on this car is 5,765 pounds. To give you an idea, the Model Y is 4,555. So the e-tron is 26% heavier than a Model Y. And even the Model X is 5,390, and this is 5,765. So it is a very heavy car, even though it's more on the size of the Model Y.
Yeah. Going back to the luxury, to be fair, when I saw the Audi e-tron, there's a Jaguar dealership next door. So my kids and I went and looked at the Jaguar at that dealership first, which is luxury on luxury, that I-Pace. And then we went to the e-tron. It wasn't as nice, but I would say that the new Audi, the new version, that 2022 style, I think it might be as nice as that Jaguar that we saw that day. Now, I don't know about
That's
the current
funny.
one.
We test drove the Jaguar I-Pace with our friend Pat Dengler. We got to go to a little event where we got to drive it on a little track, and then they drove us, and then we drove out on the open road. And I didn't actually feel luxury from that. They were really emphasizing the sportiness of it. Uh-huh. So the thing you did on the track, you were actually competing against anybody else who had driven that day on trying to swerve around things where they would light up a post, and that meant you were to go to the left of it, and the other post, then the one to the right would go. So you're swirling back and forth. So they were really concentrating on the sportiness and the handling of the car. I didn't think actually about, did this feel luxurious? But the first word I said was luxurious when I got into the Audi e-tron.
Yeah, the I-Pace, this is not in an adult way at all, but the I-Pace, I just wanted to snuggle up into the seats and then just like a kid, like lick everything to make sure it was mine. Like, I just thought I want to, and the guy was very nice, but you could tell he was just a little creeped out by you? No, I wasn't doing that. My kids were, but I wasn't. No, he was very nice, but he was just kind of putting up with this because I really wanted to take a test drive, but they didn't have any other ones, and it was in the showroom, and tried to get him to convince, for me and my kids to take an $80,000 car out for a test drive. He just wasn't having it. So.
So when we were driving the car, the first thing I asked about was regenerative braking. I am, as people have heard before, a huge fan of one pedal driving. I just find that might be my favorite thing about driving my car, is that it's like driving a go-kart. I just sit there with this one foot, in, out, in, out, in, out. I don't brake. I use the brakes, as I've said before, maybe once a week at the most, maybe once every couple of weeks. So I go in and out of my driveway, into my garage. I come to stop signs. I go in parking lots. I'm never using the brakes. I'm just feathering that one accelerator. And that is much less tiring. Like when you're on the freeway, it's very nice to be able to drive like that. And so I asked David about that, and he said, well, it does have regenerative braking, but you have to turn it on every time you start the car up. And he didn't know why that was. He says it's a pain, and he thinks he might have tried it once, but it was such a pain he didn't even remember where it was. So that was kind of annoying. I was looking forward to one pedal driving on a luxury vehicle to see what that would feel like.
How did the braking feel just in general? Because you're used to one thing, which is the Model 3. So how did it feel compared? Because it's a heavy car.
I would say it felt good. It felt normal. It felt like driving an ICE vehicle that was well made. I think I talked to you recently about the Solo, the little $18,000 three-wheel. I hated braking in that thing.
Yeah.
That was terrible. And you felt the same way. And so I was ready for something like that just because I don't brake anymore. What does braking feel like? And it felt fine. It was okay. I just would have preferred to have one pedal driving.
And how is the acceleration? Because it doesn't have great acceleration. It's 5-ish seconds, 0 to 60s. But how did it feel?
You know, I didn't get a chance to really test that. I was just to the point where I went, oh, yeah, I got to try this off the line. And I said, how about now? And that's when David said, yeah, you're turning left right here into the restaurant. And so I was really mad I didn't get a chance to test it. It's supposed to be 5-ish seconds, which is pretty snappy for a car that weight.
Yeah, I mean, like, and I'll have to look it up, but the Ferrari Testarossa, like in the 80s, that was like the creme de la creme as far as cars, right? It didn't have I don't think it had a sub 4 second, I'm looking it up
acceleration.
Here. Acceleration.
Yeah, I don't think this is a car you buy for that. Even though it says Sportback.
Yeah.
I think Sportback might be just the look of the car, not as, I didn't study all the specs to see what Sportback meant versus regular versus anything else in the model.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's more of a gimmick to show your friends, but it is, I don't know. It is fun. It is fun just to get in there and womp on it.
Oh, I'm not going to lie. That is my second favorite thing about driving my Tesla Model 3 is, what is mine? 0 to 60 in 3.1 now? It was 3.2, but they did an upgrade and it's 3.1. It is really, really, really fun to do.
Yeah.
But when I got in that car, I didn't feel like that was the point. I felt like I was driving, the Queen of England in the back. Well, I guess the King of England now, but,
yeah.
It felt more like it was a car to be really comfortable in for a long time.
So 5.3 seconds is 0 to 100 kilometers per hour, which is about 0 to 62. So 5.3 seconds for the Ferrari Testarossa in 1984. So, 5.5 seconds in a car that weighs, 5,800 pounds. It's not bad.
Yeah. That one of the things we're going to have to get into here is the range. And I know I'm jumping all over in our notes, but the result of having a car that's that heavy and maybe not as good as efficiency with the batteries and other things is the range is only 222 what I call lying miles. My car is 310 lying miles. It never gets 310. It's maybe 280. So this is their rated is 222. And that's not very far considering it's a 95 kilowatt hour battery. The Model Y is a 75 kilowatt hour battery with a 300 mile lying range.
Yeah. So one of the things about, and I don't want to say that it's all, I don't want to be rude. I don't want to say that it's all automakers that have been around for longer than 15 or 20 years. But the efficiencies in their cars, I think they're just trying to get the cars out, and they'll wait for the efficiencies to come later. So Tesla really concentrated early on let's make this more efficient, get more range, get more range, get more range. Whereas these other companies, I think they're just 95 kilowatt hour battery is still a pretty big battery. 100 kilowatt hour.
That's 25% bigger than the Model Y, and it gets 30% less range. And but the car weighs 25% more. So, we were talking about this with Chris's Ford F-150 Lightning. Is his range is the same as Steve's car, as the Model Y, but the car weighs twice as much. So the battery is twice as big. So it takes twice as long to charge to get the same range.
What did we say? His was like 140 kilowatt hours, something like that.
It's because it was close to double.
Yeah.
That is very interesting to me. I never really thought about that with the Teslas, that they had done so much work on the efficiency of the batteries and getting the range out of them. I didn't think about that much until I started looking at other cars and seeing, well, that range isn't great. And David and his wife live in Texas, as I mentioned, and they often go to Austin. And they had some dicey times trying to get from one place to the other with charging. For two reasons. One, because that range is really low, and obviously all cars lie on what their range actually is, but also because there's not a lot of electrification in Texas just yet. It's getting there. We went to the largest fueling station in the world, the Buc-ee's, it's called. It's a really wild place. Look it up. It's nutty. But Buc-ee's is putting in, at the one in Houston, putting in 23 Tesla superchargers. Oh, nice. And I thought that was a good indicator that things maybe are starting to shift there. But right now it was a little dicey for him to make the trip in that car.
Yeah, Sierra and Brad were in somewhere around Houston. It was maybe Galveston area, but they were there during the snowpocalypse, and they're renting an Airbnb on the beach. As you can imagine, that's probably wasn't the best time to be there. But their Tesla, which is just the standard range now, they were able to go and use the destination charger at a hotel. They were able to use superchargers when they were making their way to their next destination, which was New Orleans, with relatively few interruptions. I mean, it was a pain in the butt because they had to spend most of their time in the car instead of the Airbnb they paid for. But in terms of Tesla chargers in that area, they were quite lucky. And in one case, they thought that the whole station was down, and it just was the charger that they were using, because the guy's like, hey, come over here and you can use this one when I leave. And so they were actually saved in that case.
And I think that's gotten much better over time. Some of our very earliest experiences in my car, we went to Vegas and we had exactly that kind of experience. And I think we had actually driven the car down too far, and it was having trouble getting started charging. Mm-hmm. So the charger would come on and click off and come on and click off. And we thought something was wrong with the charger. And a friend of ours was in the car with us, and he said, hey, I just noticed something. Every time it's cycling, you're getting a couple of miles. Keep doing it. And then finally, after it had kept doing it for a while, then it started to actually charge. But that was very nerve-wracking to be so low you can't leave, but yet not be able to charge. But we have never had that problem since.
That's interesting. So since we're on the charging topic, let's talk about, you can charge from either side, and the right side is a level 2 and the left side is what?
So the left side can be a level 2 or a level 3 charger, and the right side is a level 2 charger. So when he's at home, he just plugs in, he bought a ChargePoint charger, he plugs into that on the right side because it's easier. But he got like a really long cable. I was really surprised. You could probably go around the car twice and back into the car. But when he goes to a level 3 charger, he can use the left-hand side. And wouldn't you really love to have a car that had if you have an ICE vehicle still, have a gas cap on both sides? So you didn't have to know, and you got into the thing, oh man, I got to turn around. I think it's kind of cool.
That's actually it's a really clever idea. I don't think the later models had that. That's the first I've heard of that.
Okay.
So,
okay. Yeah,
I could be wrong.
It's kind of nifty.
Yeah, it's cool.
It has a little door that pulls up sort of like a Tesla Model X, not Gull Wing, but what's it called? The other one.
Oh, a Falcon Wing.
Falcon Wing. Yeah, it kind of slides up.
Oh, that's
cool. My first thought, though, was what my dad would always say, well, it's just another thing to go wrong.
Yeah, that was a favorite thing of my grandpa and my dad to say as well. Even though my dad had like the highest end Ford Blazer or Chevy Blazer when it came out, and they changed the body style back in the 90s, he bought the best one you could get with the TVs in the back when that was unusual. He had no grandkids to put it in. He had no children to put back there, but he owned it.
No, my dad was like, he was against electric windows. That's just one more thing to go wrong.
Yeah.
He was right.
The 50 amp, you said it was a 50 amp circuit, but it's 40 amps when it gets finally to the charger, right? Or to the
right. But Steve wasn't sure that it was actually pulling 40 amps. He was getting 8.6 kilowatts. And this gets back into kilowatt hours per fortnight conversations that we don't want to go into today. I can do it when I've got the notes in front of me, but I can't otherwise. He just said that did not sound as high as it should have been. So he's not sure he was getting the full 40 amps.
Yeah, and then if you were to DC fast charge, it's you can go up to 150 kilowatt charging. But if you're at a station and you go higher than that, it doesn't really make any sense. You're just kind of taking a spot. So just be aware if you own one of these. But 5 to 80% in 30 minutes. It's not too bad.
Yeah, that actually is pretty fast,
good. But it's not bad considering.
And remember the mantra is from Rod Simmons, just don't charge beyond like 60% because you're just wasting your time. Go to the next station and charge the next 60 up to 60% because the charge curve is flat, or I'm sorry, is linear up to about 60%. Then it starts to roll off and you're just wasting time to sit there.
Yeah, Rod was on, maybe it was a year ago now, and he was telling us about his philosophy when it comes to charging. So
well, he's so right. He was trying to teach me that, and I didn't believe him. And I would every time we go to Fresno, which is about a 6-hour drive, well, because we stopped for a long time to eat, and before we had an EV, we always stopped to eat, and we stopped twice. We're big lazy people, don't like to sit in the car. But we would sit there like for an hour waiting for it to get all the way up, and it was taking us forever to get anywhere. And he says, "Yeah, what are you doing that for? Just do like 20 minutes." 20 minutes. And that way you get to stop, stretch your legs a couple of times, get a drink, go potty, get back on the road. And you're actually much more efficient with your time to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't wait to try that out in practice. I'm itching for an EV so bad. And I know when this happens and I get impatient, I make foolish decisions. And it's not
You've been so patient though, Bodie. What's it been, like 2 years?
No, it's been 6 years because I thought I would go a year in this podcast, then I'd own an electric car. So, so we're 5 years out, but that's okay.
You're playing a game of chicken with Tesla and the what's that ugly truck called? Cybertruck.
Cybertruck. Yeah. How dare you? I'm so sorry, Cybertruck. He's right here.
He's holding up his little model Cybertruck that Steve and I sent to him. Well, hey, I want to talk about the navigation and displays in the Audi e-tron because
yes,
I'm critical of standard looking cars nowadays that are covered in buttons and dials. And I have this argument with Stephen Getz all the time where he's a big believer in buttons and dials. He said you can pull his buttons and dials out of his cold, dead hands. I love getting into the Tesla and I see a screen and virtually nothing else. There's 2 scroll wheels on the steering column and that's it. There's nothing. There are no buttons and dials. There's the stock and there's the what I think is the windshield wiper, but it doesn't rain in California, so I haven't actually gotten to test that yet. Okay, once. But when I see a car covered in buttons, it makes my eyes bleed. The displays in the Audi e-tron are gorgeous. There's a lot more buttons and dials, things you can do. It has wireless CarPlay, and I've been a big critic of CarPlay, and part of it is because people tell me, well, I would never get a Tesla because it doesn't have CarPlay. You know, I got to have CarPlay. And I figured out why people are so adamant about that. It's because it's the first system they ever used after the horrible systems auto companies put into their cars. So in comparison to that, it is the best thing that has ever been designed on planet Earth. But it's not necessarily better than what you can get with the Tesla navigation and entertainment system. You can have arguments either way. And the CarPlay for a lot of people is slightly better, but it's not like you're going back to an embedded car system. So that's my start a religious war opening line. I think one of the reasons I really don't like CarPlay is because all of my experience has been in rental cars. So the displays are horrible. They're technically touchscreens, but yeah, Bodie's holding his fingers up to like a 4-inch square. Yeah, they're very small. The display is very cartoony, and it takes up so much of the viewable space of the map is covered up with all this stuff. You do get the stuff you need. So it does say turn left at the next exit. And that's real bold and big. And you can glance down and see it real quickly, but you can't see situational awareness very well, like you can with a giant Tesla screen. Well, on the Audi e-tron, it is a beautiful display. I think Good grief. Did I not put a picture of the display in? I sent Bodie a couple of photos.
I'm on their site right now. I can see.
Okay. The display of the from the Audi e-tron CarPlay display is big. It's bright. It's a good touchscreen. CarPlay is still missing some things. You can't pinch to zoom. And it seems to me you should be able to pinch to zoom on a $80,000 car, but you can't do that. You got to use the little buttons. So I still don't like the navigation in CarPlay, but having only CarPlay on that display was important. So down below the main display is another display for your temperature controls. If I had my druthers, if I had one button or dial on my car, it would be temperature controls, because I'm always going up a degree, down a degree, up a degree, down a degree. I'm really annoying about that. But having it separate was good, but it's even farther down below your line of vision. But the buttons are real big and it's very pretty. So I'm not sure what the trade-off is there. But I did not hate CarPlay on this car. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, and I think I think you hit it right, is that the screen is really beautiful the way it's built into the dash. A lot of car companies are pushing it out from the dash now, and this one is just kind of a part of the dash, right?
Yeah, it doesn't stick out.
It's just kind of built in and blends in, but it's still really pretty. It's a pretty display, and it's responsive.
It's big and it's responsive. But why can't CarPlay do pinch to zoom? Maybe some cars it can, but I've tried it in every single rental car and none of them could. And I figured if it couldn't do it in this car, maybe it couldn't do it at all. I don't know.
That's a good question. I don't know. We
send hate mail to Bodie at 918digital.com.
I welcome it. Bring it.
So I think
it has Android Auto as well, right? I know that's not...
I wouldn't have any way of knowing that.
I'm looking on Audi's site and I can't find it, but I'm pretty sure they don't just offer one.
I would think they probably would. I mean, you'd hate to exclude such a vast swath of drivers to have it only be CarPlay. I don't know that you have a way of knowing that unless you plug in an Android phone.
Yeah.
I mean, reading the specs online, obviously, but getting in the car... The phone hooked up and having wireless CarPlay, I thought was really slick. The idea of having to wire my phone in, wires crawling across the display, don't like that.
Yeah, the wireless is key. Although I'd never use that on I wouldn't use wireless on a rental car. But
oh, right. So it has another display that it has a heads-up display that does a couple of things that were real interesting. We were sitting at a light, and I looked right in front of me, and it was telling me how many seconds until the light turned.
Oh, that's cool.
I didn't know that information was knowable by cars.
I wonder if it's guessing. I don't know. That is news to me.
It sure didn't seem to be. It was a countdown by seconds, and it seemed to match up. And I knew exactly how long I had to, not play with my phone, not play TikTok or anything.
Huh. That's cool. When you were driving, and I know you hit on this a little bit, but I'm curious, did you, I don't know how much because you're just driving to the restaurant, right? But I don't know how much, would you be able to easily change the heating controls and radio and any other activities you might do when you're driving as a responsible driver? Was that still fairly easy?
So I didn't play around with the audio. I tend to be a podcast listener. I don't really listen to music. And because it was CarPlay, it had Overcast up there on the screen. So I don't know. That would be as easy as it would be on any CarPlay system. It'd be about the same. As far as the temperature controls, they are down low because it's a display below the main display. But the buttons were pretty big, and I can't believe, I swear I took a photo of them, but I don't have it up I can't see it right now. But they were really big buttons for up, down, unlike the Tesla on-screen buttons. The Tesla on-screen buttons are much higher, so I wouldn't have to look as far down on the Tesla, but the buttons are tiny. They're not tiny, but they're not reach over and do it without looking buttons. They are, I have to look at it every time, and that's after almost 3 years of driving this car. Yeah. So I would say it's probably better, but it is down out of your line of vision for sure.
The picture that you sent me has the rear climate controls.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. The rear climate controls are gorgeous. They're
pretty.
really nice. It's a touchscreen display, so you've got a slider and a plus minus, and hotter colder tells you the temperature of the fan. It has seat heaters in the back too. I believe it's got seat coolers as well.
Yeah, it should have ventilated seats.
Yeah, that's apparently important in non-temperate climates.
It's super important to me and Chris. Okay, so we've covered the interior, we've covered charging and the battery. What about those little things that you might not think about when you're going to buy a car and you're just kind of sitting in it? You know, things like towing and such.
Well, one of the things that I know I've seen this done before, I think BMW does it, but it just was so pleasingly well done. When you open the door, it projects onto the ground the word e-tron, and it's very bright. In the picture I sent to Bodie, it's broad daylight out, and it is bright white on the concrete and really crisp letters. It says e-tron, and for some reason that little touch made me happy. I really like that. It has built-in screens for, like, you want to protect somebody from the sun. They come up from inside the window, and David said he was very disappointed that they weren't automatic. You know, they couldn't press a button to make them go up and down. It was really awful that you had to grab them and pull them. The car can tow up to 4,000 pounds. When I was talking to Chris right after he bought his Lightning, one of the things he really liked was the top-down view from the car, and he said that helped him with parking and making sure he wasn't bumping into things. And I thought, I don't know, I don't need that. And that's probably me going, well, I don't have it, therefore it must be bad and stupid, and I don't need it. But in the Audi e-tron, it had a beautiful display from the top down, and David's his garage. He pulls out of his garage, and then he's kind of in a carport, and he's got two brick encased posts on one on either side that he's got to avoid. So having that view top down was really handy, pulling the car in and out.
And and I'm sure Ford's updated this, but Chris's top down view. So it uses, just in case anybody doesn't know, it uses the relative position of the car and then the cameras, and then on the screen you see the car, and then it just kind of shows it from a top down. Obviously, it's not really a top down, but based on the cameras and where you are, it gives you that information. And Chris's was weird early on. I don't know if it got fixed. It's a good question to ask him. It just looked
I didn't
off.
think it looked. Yeah, I didn't think it looked right. I know what you mean. I was trying to put my finger on it. This looked more real than Chris's did. I don't want to talk down Chris's car because I love that car. It was very cool. But it was this. I think this display was a little bit better. I liked it. He's got huge wheels on this car, 22-inch wheels.
Yeah, I can't imagine what it's going to cost to replace those tires, man. When I saw that on your notes, I was like, oof, because I got to replace tires in both of my cars in the next week or two, and I'm like, oh, can't imagine.
Have I told you my funny story about replacing tires?
No.
This has nothing to do with electric vehicles, but I just love to tell the story. Steve wanted to replace the tires on one of my cars, and my requirements for tires are that they're round and black would be good. And that's the end of my requirement set. His requirements was it has to be the exact same ones that came on the car. And it's like, okay, well, whatever. So it was some Michelin, something or other that had to be replaced. So he looks around and they're really expensive. And back then, he found them at Costco for $400 a piece. It was like $1,600. I'm like, can you get him cheaper? But he wanted these, so it was okay, whatever he wants. So he took the car over and then he had me come pick him up. And I went and got him. And then when it was time to go pick it up, they told him it was ready. So he dropped me off and he left. And I go in to pay for it, and the guy behind the counter says, all right, that'll be $400 or $1,600 cash or American Express. And I said, I don't have an American Express card, and I did not bring $1,600 with me. And he said, then you can't have your car back. And I said, well, we got an issue here. You know, this is information that perhaps my husband should have been told before he left me here. And, you know, we could have maybe gone and gotten cash, but now I don't have a car to go get the cash. And I'm arguing with this guy, and I'm never going to win. But I also don't have any choice but to argue. I literally can't do anything, right? So all of a sudden, a guy gets up. He's been sitting, waiting for his car, gets up, walks up to me, and starts peeling $100 bills off of a roll from his pocket. I look over, and it's an acquaintance of mine from work. Like, I knew his name, And I knew he was a guy that I worked with, but that's all the more I knew him. And it turned out he had been playing poker that weekend and had all of his winnings in his pocket, and he paid for my tires.
Oh, wow. That was very kind.
I mean, I had to pay him back,
Still.
but that's the only reason I ever got home that day. I love that story.
That's really funny. My friend Tony, her dad is also named Tony, very Italian family. She just, even at 45 years old, she'll just occasionally drive to her parents' house. Her dad always goes out and looks at her car and be like, you need new tires. And he'll just go put new tires on it. So that's how she gets new tires.
Maybe I need to stop by Tony's house.
No, it doesn't work because I've parked in his driveway before and he's looked at my car and not once has he offered to replace my tires.
Oh, well, that stinks. Well, I got to tell you, the best part of that story with this acquaintance of mine was the look on his wife's face. Because she sees her husband get up and just start handing money to a woman she's never seen before.
Oh, yeah. That actually adds a little wrinkle to the story.
Yeah. Yeah. What else? No. Let's see. It does have a frunk, which we forgot to look at, but I looked at pictures online.
Small.
It's pretty small. It's not going to fit Chris in it at all.
Yeah. If anybody's curious, Chris Ashley fit himself inside the frunk of and Chris is a tall guy, fit himself inside the frunk of the F-150. So lots of space.
And Chris is much smaller than he used to be, but his handle online is Big Chris Ashley because he's a big boy.
Yeah. Yeah. And it wouldn't fit. It probably wouldn't even fit a small animal, I'm guessing. Not that you should put an animal in there. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I would say like a small size cooler is all the bigger you could get into the one in the e-tron. You asked a couple questions in the show notes. How quiet was the ride?
Yep.
Ride was real quiet. It was beautiful. I mean, like I said, it just felt really smooth. It felt luxurious. I enjoyed driving it, and I had a lot good to say about the car. And I expected to be critical because, oh, it's not as good as my Tesla, but I had no feeling of that at all. I would like this car maybe when I'm older and I don't need as much sportiness to make me feel still alive at 64, Mm-hmm. So overall, I'd say that I really like the car. If you're looking for a luxurious car that's maybe not super sporty, but you're just going to be really comfortable and feel classy in and still get an electric vehicle, I might wait to see if they come out with something with more range, or one of our recommendations has been that if you're nervous about range, keep one ICE vehicle and one EV, and that way your EV is doing most of your driving. But when you do need the long range, which most people don't need most of the time, then you take your ICE vehicle out.
Yeah. And I just wanted to say two really cool things is if you barely shut the door, right? If it's almost enough to click, it'll shut the rest of the way for you, which is a really cool feature. It's called the soft close feature. And then the other thing is when you're buckling up your seatbelt, and this is at nighttime, and I don't have this problem so much with my current cars, but when I had a Volkswagen, the Germans put that thing so flush with the seat. It's a hard time. You have a hard time finding the seatbelt at nighttime. This one has a little light at the buckle point. So
is it lit up all the time?
No, I don't know exactly how that works.
Or is it activated by pulling the?
It must be activated by pulling it because I only saw a video online about it. But that's a really cool feature at night.
That should be in all cars.
I agree. It's like when keyboards didn't have backlit keys. It's just we lived in caveman times.
I'm a touch typist. So I don't know what you're talking about. I don't need no stinking backlit keys.
I wish I was. So if anybody is interested in this vehicle and they don't want to spend $80,000, the e-tron Quattro actually starts at $48,000, which is reasonable in comparison. It's got a range of about 265 miles or 426 kilometers with an 82 kilowatt hour battery pack. So. Yes.
Oh, so that's a smaller battery, but a lot more range, or 40 miles more range, 43 more miles of range.
Yeah.
So it must be a lighter car.
Yeah. It's a smaller car. But it's still just as nice. So if anybody's interested, they should give that a shot. Allison,
that sound cool.
Thank you very much for coming on the show. Why don't you tell everybody how to find you and what you've been up to?
Well, my podcast is, I got a bunch of them. My website is podfeet.com and named because my husband says I have feet like pods. great SEO. I'm amazing at that. But I've got my flagship show is called the NosillaCast, and it's a technology geek podcast with an ever so slight Apple bias. And it's super fun. We got a great community, a lot of nice people, and it's been going for 17 and a half years without missing a show every single week.
Yes, and as somebody that's interacted with Allison's community, they are very welcoming and very nice. So I encourage everybody to go and check them out.
Yeah, everybody but Kevin, but yeah, right.
Kevin's nice. All right, Allison, thank you so much.
All right, appreciate being on the show.
All right, everybody, that is our show this week. I want to thank Allison Sheridon for coming on and sharing her experiences with the Audi e-tron Sportsback. It's a really cool car. I think if I have time this week, I think I'm going to go and try and test drive one. Maybe next week. I don't know. I got a lot of things going on over the next couple of weeks. I've got some training for work. So the schedule's just going to be all over the place for the podcast. I'm still committed, at least for the next couple of weeks, to get out 2 episodes a week. And then once Christmas rolls around or the holidays roll around, it'll probably slow down a little bit after that because there's not as much news during that time period. But right now, there's just a ton of EV news, which is exciting. Let's see here. Allison and I referenced Chris Ashley and Rod Simmons several times. So I just want to give their podcast a shout out because they talk about electric vehicles on their SMR podcast all the time. That's Sam, Mary, Robert podcast. And I'm sure SMR stands for something, but I don't know what it is. They do that show with Rob Dunwood. It's a really good show. They talk about electric vehicles. They talk about tech. They just talk about what's going on in their lives. It's a super good show. And if you like them, Rod and Chris do a show called Barbecue and Tech, which is a really good show. And Rob Dunwood does a tech show. Stephanie Humphrey and Terrence Gaines. It's really good. It's called The Tech John. I'm going to put all the links in the show notes. And then again, everything good begins with podfeet.com. So check out what Allison's doing over there and her lovely and kind community. All right, everybody, that is it for me today, but not it for me this week. I will talk to you on this Friday. It's all about news. I've got a lot of news, too. So it should be a good show. Looking forward to chatting with you on Friday.